And Kathy Dad asked me to narrate this step-by-step video of how he makes furniture, specifically your coffee table. He'll explain each tool and what it is used for. I told the chucklehead to put chapter markers in the description so you can jump over boring sections, and let me tell you there are a lot. He has over 2 hours of raw video. As the executive producer, I trimmed it down as much as I can. We hope you enjoy it. I am back. You told Dad wanted a mission-style version of your nesting coffee table made in red oak. Since you wouldn't let him take it, he took lots of pictures for reference and then made drawings. For those folks and Kathy forced to watch this, they had several phone calls and text messages until the final design was settled. You know, I am going to have to get a pay raise if he makes me narrate this whole thing.
Rudy's agent has demanded an increase in his appearance fees, so I'm back to narrating on my own. Once the drawings were approved, I looked through my stash of lumber, decided what I needed to buy, and then took a trip up to Hicksville Planing Mill. It is a Mennonite-run lumber yard, so you have to watch your manners and be patient. They have wood that you can't get at a Lowe's or Home Depot. Okay, Kathy, this is day one, and unless you call an introduction day one, what I'm looking at is I've got to cut this into sections, 4 at 17 inches and 8 at 16 inches. The first thing I do is I look and see if there's any cracks. Right there's an end crack that goes about right here. Up right here. And the question I ask myself is, alright, do I need to cut the end off, or can I get sections out of that? So 2.5 is what I need. I need at least 2 at 2.5, so that's 3.5 to that crack. And on this side, it's 5 to that crack. So I can get at least 2 out of that. So I'm no longer worried about that crack. And then what's on the other end? There's no end cracks on this end. There's some, that looks like it. So I think I'm going to work from that end. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take it over here and put it on the chop saw, move the camera, and we'll just cut them individually as we go. Okay, so it's on my cutoff saw. If you notice down here, you can't see through it. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'll cut this, I'll cut a second one, then I'll turn it over and I'll cut it off. Okay, so for the safety nuts out there, there's little chance of dust or something flipping out here, but I wear glasses as well, which are impact resistant. All right, so now I have 4 cut at 16, 2 cut at 17, and the leftover is 22 inches. So the leftover I'll dimension as I do everything else, because that will be, if I don't like a leg, I can make more legs out of that, or I can resaw it and make other stuff out of it. So the next problem is, in order to plane these, get flat edges, I need to run it through my flat edges this way. I need to run it through my jointer. My jointer can only handle stuff up to 8 inches wide. And this is almost 8.5 inches wide. So I'm going to set my bandsaw over here. I'm going to set it to 7 7/8. That's not it yet. I'll set it to 7 7/8. And I'll cut this down. I'll cut these down so they're all 7 7/8 inch wide. This is one of the safest saws for cutting irregular lumber I have. If I tried to run it through my table saw over here, the boards would pinch because you can see they're not flat. They're not flat. That one's quite bowed. All right, so we got to get them flat. Okay, so to run them through the bandsaw, I need a good straight edge. And that edge is pretty straight, but it's my experience has been it's safest to plane one edge and have a nice straight guide. Otherwise, you end up with a little bit of a wavy line as it goes through the bandsaw. So that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to take all of them. I'm going to look at it and say if there's a curve or a bow in the board, I'm going to put that so it'll be down on the tape on the bandsaw. So that because if it goes the other way, it'll wobble. Right? So I look at the board. I say the bow's over here, so I'm going to run that edge. All right, so I'm ready to cut the edges off. I know I said 6 7/8. I meant 7 7/8. So as much as I can when it goes on the 8-inch joiner. So let's see what happens. I need to tighten the blade. Make it nice and tight. Next step is to check to make sure this thing is thick enough. So I got to raise the rollers, the guides. Alright, and I always want the bow down, so I'll show you. See, that doesn't rock back and forth. If I turn it the other way, this will rock back and forth, and it makes it difficult to get a straight edge. So it's going to go through that way. It's going to cut, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch off. I hate losing that scrap, but I don't have a wide enough jointer, so that's what we're going to do. I have an outfeed roller, catch it and put that to the side. Next step, we're going to go over to the planer. Okay, so we're back on the, I call it the planer, the jointer. And I now ready to check the guard. Loosened it up so that goes shut. And I have this square, because every time I loosen up the fence and move it, I got to make sure it's square again. So, a little magnetic. First step is set the tool up. I want it just enough to get in there the first time. And we're going to make noise. Make some sawdust, wood chips. So that's enough of that. You don't need to watch me do all that. So here's an example of what I'm trying to avoid, is like slowly dry and re-dry this wood. That wood is almost unusable except for very small parts. I could run it through the jointer and the planer and get thinner short pieces, but that as a big long piece is not usable. All right, so now I've got all of them skimmed, roughly dimensioned, not meaning dimensioned to the point where I can make final parts out of them, but roughly dimensioned just so they can dry some. And I'll stack them all up, I'll sticker them, and I'll show you the pictures of that, what it looks like after that. And we let it dry. Okay, Kathy, they're stickered. We'll leave them there for a week or so. Fans blowing on them. The whole purpose of this is to stabilize the wood a little bit more. It's kiln dried, so it ought to be really stable. But I always do this just to be safe. And we leave it like that for a week. So I'm back to work on the project to make your coffee tables, and today I'm cutting out or roughing out the boards that are going to be the 3/4 inch thick rails and stiles and the tops. And this is an example of the board that I'm going to be using, and I got a whole bunch more up there. So the first thing I do is I look at the board and I'm checking for in cracks like this. That's an in crack, and that's an in crack. So I look over the whole board, looking for defects, knots. Check the other end for in cracks. And it looks pretty clean. That's a defect in the board. And what I do is I plan how I'm going to cut this. So for example, if I cut that knot out, it'll make it a little cleaner. Or if I want to use that knot as a design feature, I'll leave it. But in this case, I want to take them out. So when I start, I also measure the widths here to see if I can get a section of wood here and not have to cut the end off. Otherwise, I cut the whole end off and I lose maybe, what, 4 inches or so. So that's the next step. Stand by. Okay, so I've decided that I'm going to cut this end off because I've got plenty of room to get the rails for the nesting tables right here. And then I can cut that knot out. I'll start from the other end and see if I'd have to cut that knot out or not. Alright, so I want to show you why I come back after planing and put it on the joiner again. So these two sides are coplanar, but they're not, these two sides are not. So even though I planed this side before, or jointed this side before I cut it and saw, if you look at it again, see this little gap down here? So I come back and I'll run it through both sides to get this perfectly square. So I'm not concerned if these are parallel or not, because I'll make them parallel when I put them on a table saw. But if I have this corner square and this corner square, when I run it through the table saw, I'll take a slice here and then take a slice here, and what's in the center will be scrap, either firewood or I'll use it for something else. And I'll cut these a little wide when I put them on a table saw. Then I'll go back over to the planer, run them through the planer, which I left at the last setting for doing the tops and bottoms, and then I'll make them all exactly 2.5 inches. So that's coming up next.
Dad loves this saw. Knowing that Dad is a chucklehead, Mom bought it for him so he won't lose any fingers. That doesn't seem to stop him from trying.
Okay, so table saw is ready to rip. Ha ha ha. Over here on my scale, I have it a 1/16 over 2.5. That way, when I take it back to the planer, or excuse me, the planer, and I run it that edge through, then it'll be perfectly 2.5 square. All sides will be exactly the same. I've raised the table saw blade up enough so that you can get through it. In one pass. A lot of people like to do it halfway and make 2 passes, particularly since I'm going to be running it through the planer again. A lot of people will do that. I just like to do one and get it over with. So, so all set up. Let's turn the All right, so here's all the legs. I've measured them, they're all exactly 2.5 by 2.5. The only other thing to do next would be cut these all down It's lunchtime, so I decided this is a good time to stop for today, and I got other stuff I can be working on. And it's not doesn't hurt like everything else to let it acclimate a little bit more, since I took almost a 1/4 inch off each side. So only need a few days or so, and then I'll be ready to jump on it again. And these, of course, are the parts for the rails and stiles, and we'll give those another week. So maybe I'll just another week and start on all of them at once. And this is my cut list and my notes, so I know what I'm supposed to be doing, and I don't cut it the wrong size, and I learned that the hard way, make a cut list. And it's ready to go, so that's it for today. Okay, so today I'm cutting the rails for the nesting tables. I didn't show you much about cutting them down, but you've seen everything that I did before, ran through the table saw, etc. I did just show you a couple of bloopers. So what I'm doing now is I'm checking the ends for square. I want to make sure they're square, and then I can line them up. And you might ask, well, why am I doing this? I need 8 that are exactly the same length. It's 8 per nesting table. So I can get, and I need 16 total. So if I stack them up like this and cut them once, I know those are all exactly the same length. So that's what I'm doing next. I'm making sure everything's set up. I got this the right distance. And I'll line them all up here and cut them off. So that's what I'm doing next. Getting these all lined up, measured, checked, etc. I've got a board here in the back, and that's sacrificial. That board keeps there from being tear out from the saw blade on this one when it cuts. And so I had to do a little more adjustment, because you can run your finger down this side and feel if everything's not aligned. It may look aligned, but when you run your finger along there, you can feel the difference. And if I can feel the difference, you'll be able to see it. So once I get my jig set up and I check everything, I run my finger across there, and if all looks good, then I can cut it. So there's 4. And I want to show you, because this side didn't have a board behind it, I have some tear out. So I'll just turn it around. I checked it for square. I'll just turn it around and put it back in there. And now that tear out will be cut off, because here's my line up here. And now I have 8 boards that are perfectly the same length. It's really easy to do. Okay, so I'm laying out the parts to the nesting tables, and I'm going to clamp them together. And I set my square for 1 3/4 inches, because that's how far we're going to raise it up. Then I have these 1/4 inch spacers, and you said it was a 1/4 inch inset, so I'm laying these in face down. I'll put these in together, and I've got this board here so I can pull things together this way. And then I start at the top, because it's easy to get those clamped together and lined up and clamped together, and then I come back down here and I'll clamp this side together. And then once I got at least 2 of them done, I'll clamp them all together and stand it up so we get a visual perspective of, is the inset, 1/4 inch inset, enough? Do we need more? Whatever. So we'll work on that. So first things first, is I got my spacers in up here. I line those up. I use my clamps here. Also, because these clamps, as they pull it in, they square everything up, so I don't have to worry about cantilevering around. And they come back down here. And I get my hammer to tap it out. Alright, so the other advantage of doing it this way is then I can draw centering lines, so when I put my floating tenons in, that it all lines up just perfectly. And then I put going on. I'm moving this up higher because I'm going to end up putting two here as well, right? Two coming this way, so I can have a full set of legs. And then we stand it up and we look at it. And when I look at that, that's not a whole lot. Okay, so this is the 1/4 inch setback. All right. 1/4 inch setback. And this is a 1/2 inch setback. And a little bit view from far. I kind of like the 1/2 inch better than the 1/4 inch, but that's your call. I'll send you pictures. All right, today we're going to work on tenons, floating tenons. I use the Festool domino system, and what we do is we put one tenon here. All right, cut that out. All right, so this is a domino, and it goes in like that. You can see it better over here. So what I need to do is I need to mark the center of these boards where they come together. So this is 1 7/8, so that makes it 15/16 to here. So I've got this really cool tool with pencil marks at every 30 seconds, so I can come in here at 15/16, which is 7/8 plus 2, and just make a mark. All right, and I have this nice pencil mark right here. This, I can't quite do that because it works, but it's not quite as well. But I know that this is 15/16 to the center. So on my phone, I have a construction app that actually does fractional math, which is pretty sweet. So I know from adding it up, this is 1 3/4 plus 15/16. That makes it 2 11/16 up to here. So on this board, I mark 15/16. That's the center. And then I come up here, 2 11/16, and I write all this down because I'm getting too damn old for this crap. And then I come up here, 2 11. And each one, and I buy a ruler that has 16ths marked out on it. So there's 2 11 right there. All right. So why do I do this? Because when I take these off to put the joints in, I'll have a line, and I'll show you this. I'll have a line, and that will, my domino joiner will put these holes, the mortises, in exactly the right place. I'll show this to you. So that when I put the tenon in, everything lines up perfect. Boom. And I will recess it On this one, I'll recess it down a 1/2 inch. On this one, it's set to be flush. So that's where I'm at. Alright, so I got 4 lines marked out here. To make it easier on the rest of them, I set my squares, my adjustable squares, to either end so I can mark them. This is the tenon I'm going to use. It will go in like that, except as I explained earlier. Another key thing is I always want to know what's outside, because when I put them, start cutting the tenons, has to be done the same. Otherwise, very small imperfections will make them off, and it'll leave gaps. And gaps in furniture are easy to see. I learned that the hard way. So I go through and I mark what's going to be the outside. It includes, so the legs have 2 pieces, 2 sides that I have to mark. Now I know I'll put a line here and a line on this corner down here, because that's where another board will go here, like right there, inside a 1/2 inch. All right, and then to be sure I have them correct, that's the corner. All right, so that's the corner I want right there. And this is the corner I want right there. You'll never see those lines. You'll never see those on there. This will be under the tabletop. I won't even sand it off because you'll never see it. So next step is then to take all these and mark all my lines, and then we'll go on to cutting tenons. So another note. I was looking at the legs thinking, man, they don't look right. If I turn the legs the way I had them, this way, this grain looks a little different from that grain. If I turn it that way, the grain looks the same. Same thing over here. This grain looks more like that grain. So you might think that doesn't really matter. Let me find one that's more pronounced. This has to do with the direction of the grain up here, all right? So that has the grain going pretty close to the same direction as that. And when you look at the fronts, they look pretty much the same. And when you look at the sides, they look pretty much the same too. Versus if we twisted them, they'd be off just ever so slightly. And it might not matter to very many other people, but it sure matters a lot to me. It's, to me, that's just a few extra seconds makes a big difference in how this thing presents. Layout can be so tedious and time consuming, but it's so important. Everything has to be right, as I said before. So I inspect the board. This is going to be a rail, and I'm looking for which has the best grain, which looks the nicest. This has got kind of a dark line through that. This looks more even, so I'm going to call this the front. And then they look at which ones should be the top. That's got a lot of rays exposed. I think that would detract from it, so that's going to go down. So this is the top. Take my little piece of tape. Front and top. Let me take my marker that I've laid out. I put a line there. And a line here. And I set it aside. Rinse and repeat. It takes time. Alright, so now I'm at the step where I take the rails, these are the rails for the nesting table, and I have to put tenons, mortises in them for the floating tenons. And the floating tenon fits in there like wherever I put it at. Floating tenon goes in like that. All right, and this slot is really wide, so you can move it up and down. All right. So I just did a sample. This is my test piece, and this is perfectly centered, left and right. So if I'm upside down, if I put it in this way, or if I put it in this way, it's going to come out dead center. This side is like a 64th of an inch this way, but this side is exactly right. So you'd heard me say earlier that you have to do them all the same and put them in because they're always off just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is the tenons, I'm going to do all of them tight. So there's 3 settings on this: tight, medium, and really loose. And then when I do the legs, I'll do one leg on one side tight, so I have a perfect alignment. And the other side I'll do medium, so if I do need to make an adjustment, I can. So with that, we're going to start cutting these, so I'll show you what it looks like. First you put a tenon in, they're marked, and I've put a block of wood on there so I know I'd always get it to the right place. And then I clamp this on there, making sure everything's square and tight. All right, then we turn it on. And I've made my tenon. And so it fits in perfect now, see? And then when I do the legs, the next batch, when I get all these done, I'll do the legs and I'll show you how it goes together. So that's called a floating tenon. And I always stop periodically and check to make sure things are still where they should be. Everything's still working. But sometimes things can get out of adjustment. And so far so good. Okay, so back on legs. I've cut all of the rails to go in here, tested them. I've actually got one put together. So what we're going to do now is we're going to cut the mortises to go in here, and then I'll finish assembling this one so you see how that goes. And then I have the second one to do. Once these, so by the end of the day, these will be assembled with no top. All right, then we test everything, make sure it fits the way I want. Then I'll make the tops, sand it all, and glue them up. And within a few days, the nesting table should be done. All right, so I've set up my clamp so I can just toss this in here like that. Clamp it down. My Festool domino turns on the dust system automatically when I start it, so you'll see that. There's a very fine line here you saw me put on earlier, and there's a line on the tool. So all I do is I overlay that. I've already checked that it has a 1/2 inch recess. Flip it over and do it again. This is otherwise known as a dry fit. There's no glue, so it's dry. Fit it, make sure it all works the way you expect it to work, and then you can go from there. That's the right front. That's the right rear. And then my tape up, out. Come on. Anytime now. There it goes. Up and out. Up and out. Like a jigsaw puzzle. And remember I said this indexes it, so those are all perfectly flush. This is exactly what I wanted. And I didn't even have to use the wide setting on the tenon. So that is a almost finished nesting end table. I hope you saw everything else I was talking about. This is what happens when my dustbin gets full on my cyclone. This is a cyclone with the dust barrels. A full dust barrel. It's important because if dust starts collecting up into the hose, it can get blown over or carried over into the filters. Those filters are a little over $200 a piece. So we just want to catch the really fine stuff that can be blown out from the inside. The heavier stuff tends to ruin the filters. Okay, I'm back to work on the tops for the nesting tables. They're going to be 18 inches in that direction and 16 inches in that direction. So I've just got them clamped up and marked so I can put some tenons in it. And this one I'll go through and match the grain so it looks nice, and also mark it for tenons, and then do the glue up. So at this stage we're putting in the floating tenons in each of these boards so that they'll be all aligned and pretty flush, and it makes a strong joint, and the surfaces will be a lot smoother. It'll be a lot less work to get these perfectly parallel. And I'm using my vacuum clamps. Makes it really easy. So I just turn on the pump, slap it on there, it's stuck on, I can do my stuff, turn it off, take it off, put the next one on, bada boom, bada bang, it's done. So the center one is narrow, and it's on narrow, so we'll do the center one first. Then we switch to the wide. The wide one there. And that's it. So I'll go ahead and do all these, and we'll get back together when I'm ready to glue it up. Okay, so we've got all the tenons, mortise is cut for the floating tenons, and the boards are all marked and numbered, so I can get them lined back up again. And so what I do is I'll put the glue on them, and I'll loosely assemble these things. And then I'll take the clamps and put them on top, from the top instead of the bottom, on the top, so that I can have space on both sides of the boards, top and bottom, to then clean off the excess glue. A little pro tip. This white thing is a shade. If you go to the hardware store and watch on their sales, they've generally got a bunch of these shades, the blinds, you know, that you pull up and down. They're blowing them out, sell them really, really cheap because, you know, somebody mismade them and nobody wants that size, and they can't get them down any further. So I periodically go by and buy up all their leftover blinds to use for gluing, or painting. It works great. So we're using Tight Bond 3. Put a little bit in each of the mortises. And then run some right down the edge. You got to make sure you get the as many loose hairs off this thing as you can, off the brush. Otherwise you have loose hairs stuck in there. And then the opposite side, the side that I'm going to mate this to, I usually bring it up so I can choose, when I've got too much glue, I can just transfer it over here. And look, there's a damn hair. And then you got to get inside, you get there, and then what I do is I use that then to get glue on the tenons. And the center ones are tight. Remember I said we had loose and tight. Loose and tight. There's another hair from the brush. Almost impossible to get rid of all of them. Ideally, there would be no squeeze out, or very, very little, because the glue would seal the edges of the wood, which makes it very hard then to get the sand, the glue out, and you end up with splotches if you don't do that. But these boards are thick, and I'm going to run them through the planer again and make them all the right thickness, and it works really great this way. So I'm not too worried about getting glue on them. And then you line them up, take the brush out of your mouth. It makes it easy because the ones on the ends are loose. You don't have to worry about getting the center one lamed up tight. And you rinse and repeat. So I'm going to stop at this point, not bore you with all this glue up, and when I go to clamp it, we'll talk again. All right, so this is the top to the nesting tables, and they're 16 by 18, and they're looking pretty good. I was pretty pleased. I tried to line all the tenons up in here, and they did it in one big board and then cut them down to size. And you know what? I should have marked.
Oh my God, is Dad a chucklehead? Or what? I leave him unsupervised for 5 minutes, and what does he do? So there's nothing new to show that I haven't already done before. What I've done is make these spreaders. It's these items here, top and bottom. Normally the spreaders would be on the ends, but because the nesting tables slide out this way, you can't put the spreaders there. So the spreaders have to go in the middle. Otherwise there's nothing to keep this thing together this direction. So I got that done. One more dry fit, and it's looking really good. Last thing to do is I need to put some spacers that'll be right here. And the purpose of that is when the top is on,
it'll ride against those going all the way back and keep it from getting cockeyed when you slide it back in. Those are a piece of cake. So I'm about ready to take it apart and start sanding it. I think that's what I'm going to do tomorrow. Take it all apart, start sanding it.
Big sigh. Life got difficult around here and that chucklehead forgot to make more videos. But you've seen all the steps showing how it was made and the decisions I made during the process. Yes, he thinks he made those decisions, but we all know better. Here is the finished table. Don't let Uncle Matt ruin it when he does the staining.
That's all, folks.
Oh my God, is Dad a chucklehead? Or what? I leave him unsupervised for 5 minutes and what does he do?